Hi, welcome to the Bootleg Book Club. I'm Felicia.
And I'm Sam.
And this time around, for our third episode, we're reading Legendborn by Tracey Deonn.
I'm so excited to talk about this book. Which is funny because I didn't like it until like page 200. Mm-hmm. But when I got to around page 200, I was like, I know why you picked this book, because you love King Arthur stuff. You love that show Merlin that is on Netflix. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. And then you were an African American Studies minor, so I was like, that part is like really evident in here as well.
Yes.
And I was just like, this is like the perfect book for you. But let's get started into the About the Author, Power of the Pen segment.
Yes. So Tracey Deonn, she considers herself a complete fangirl with a geeky side. She grew up in North Carolina, and she has a bachelor's and master's with communications and performance studies. Overall, she is a really great writer. This is the first full book she's written, but she's been in writing pieces for anthologies and other things like that.
Yeah, I think she has even written for the Star Wars franchise before.
Yes. So that's a little bit about the author. Overall, about the book, it's pretty much about a young Black girl who is starting an early college career program. And she finds out that she has magic and she feels magic, and she kind of gets thrust into this magical world with Arthurian legend and trying to figure out all these things about her family history and magic in the world.
Yes, and I think what's also important though is as she's like figuring herself out, what really catapulted this whole thing was her also learning to process her grief as well, which I think is like a major theme in this book, is processing grief, and also being able to, in the process of processing grief, being able to connect with your ancestors and your lineage to kind of help you get through that process, I think.
Yes, I agree. So, for the book look, what do we have?
Well, I kind of just looked at it and thought like, oh, this is pretty typical of a like fantasy book. Like, it looks kind of mysterious and like colors, like not bright like pastel colors or colors that you might see on a romance novel, but just like it's not like just black and white. Like it was definitely like colorful in the sense like I could tell this was going to be a fantasy book, basically.
Exactly. It's a bit moody. It has the magical hands, you know, glowing. And I think overall, I was just really happy to see a Black girl on the cover.
I agree.
From the very beginning, it kind of just shone through, like, this is all about Black girl magic. It's totally centered around that, unapologetically.
Right. And I don't know if you noticed this, but I think I just realized this because I don't know that we did it purposefully, but the first 3 books that we've read have been written by Black women authors, which I knew we wanted to have Black women authors that we read like throughout our podcast, but I don't know that we like intentionally were like, okay, the first 3 are going to be that way. So the first 3 covers we have seen have had like Black women on it, and I think that's just actually incredible and interesting that we have done that. And it's just really nice and affirming that every book that we've read, we've been able to kind of see ourselves in and have that our representation in, honestly.
Right. I love how you said that. So, moving on to Bookmark. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm going to go first since I have an actual quote.
Okay.
So this was chapter 15, page 135. And she's being introduced to the group on campus. I don't want to like go into detail because I feel like we should save that for like when we do our deep dive.
Exactly.
But she's being introduced to the group on campus, and they're talking about their lineage and their history, and she says something. She says, to be able to trace one's family back that far is something I have never fathomed. My family only knows back to the generation after emancipation. Suddenly, it's hard to stand here and take in the magnificence of the wall and not feel an undeniable sense of ignorance and inadequacy, then a rush of frustration because someone probably wanted to record it all, but who would have written down my family's history as far back as this? Who would have been able to, been taught to, been allowed to? Where is our wall? A wall that doesn't make me feel lost but found. A wall that towers over anyone who lays eyes on it. Instead of awe, I feel cheated. And I feel like this is important because it kind of ties to this idea of our ancestry and our lineage as Black people. Like, we're not able to trace it as far back in comparison to other cultures. And we know this is because, Black people were stolen and brought to America against their will. But I also felt like this quote is important because it shows how great of a job Tracy does in keeping the idea of race present without demolishing the fantasy. Like, I still am, when I was reading this, I still felt really present in this whole world of the fantasy and what was going on as far as the King Arthur world. But at the same time, she did not shy away from moments where it was like race was kind of being input without like you forgetting that we're in a fantasy world, if that completely makes sense. I feel like does that all what I'm trying to tie in together make sense? But yes, I felt like, yes, I'm in a fantasy world, but my race is still important. The experiences of a Black person in a fantasy world are very evident and like it just was interesting how she kind of played all these pieces and put them together in that way.
Her creativity definitely shone, and the realism was also there. Mm-hmm. I think that it really showed through how colorblindness doesn't connect. It doesn't relate all the time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's sometimes people want to do that within fantasy world, but this recognition of race and showing that representation definitely made connections that were way deeper while reading.
And on top of that, I kind of felt like this proves that there's a way to do fantasy and include Black people.
Exactly.
Which we are often told that's not possible, so.
Yes. So for me, I definitely liked a lot of pieces of the book, and there were a few like one-liners that I liked. The words were great. I think overall what I want to highlight and bookmark though would be the ending, like completely not disconnected from the story entirely, but the author notes and acknowledgments. Do you ever read those?
I like skim them. I don't like fully go in depth.
Yeah.
Are you saying that was your favorite part?
Yes, I am. Because she goes in these kind of blurbs and sections where she talks about Arthurian legend. She talks about Black motherhood. These kind of certain subjects towards the end that wraps up the book all together. All of the themes, I think. Okay. And that was something really deep. And she kind of introduced certain pieces about herself. Like the book is dedicated to her mother, and as a writer, Tracy lost her mother too at a young age. And
I did see that. She says she's from but it's been like 5 generations back. They've lost their mother young.
Exactly. So reading that, I think it just added again more depth to the novel for me, and it was something that I really connected to. So yeah, I just want to bookmark that as something to think about.
Well, maybe I'll go back and read it more in depth.
Yes.
Okay, well, then I'm going to share just one more quote because since you didn't have like a quote or like a favorite part within the book, there was a part where she is meeting with someone and they're sitting down at a bench and they look down and there's these figurines and it's Black people like almost like holding up the bench kind of. And the person she's with says, "Not unimportant, but how can I be at peace when I look down and see that they're still working, you know?" Right. And it's just like, yeah, like we build these monuments towards Black people, or, there are not that many, but, the ones that we do build, I think it's important. Like, yeah, let's probably show them at rest. Let's probably show them at peace. Let's probably show them in happiness. They worked to the bone. their entire lives, like, and when we're honoring them, let's try to make them a little bit more restful, more peaceful. And it's just like, it really made me think, like, even something that I see online is like, when we talk about our ancestors' wildest dreams, and I don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking like doctors, lawyers. I mean, I'm a lawyer myself. Doctors, lawyers who like say like, "Oh, I'm my ancestors' wildest dreams," but like the counter to that, which I actually really identify with, is, don't you think your ancestors' wildest dream would have been rest? And it's like, yeah, I mean, again, it would have been the time to even sit down and dream and think and, not be consumed with labor. So
Right.
I thought that was really interesting too.
Yes. I think throughout the book, monuments are a big theme too, when talking about, because you have that one monument dedicated to Black people. Then you also have a monument that was dedicated to the Confederacy and a white man. And there's also a part in the book that talks about there's always two histories, especially in the South.
Especially in the South.
Recognizing that and seeing how those two histories impact people.
Right.
Again, Tracy definitely showing how looking into things a bit deeper within race is important for the storyline.
Right.
Okay. So moving on then to point of view. Who is your favorite character, favorite part of the book, or least favorite character, or least section of the book?
My favorite character was her dad, Brianna's dad, the main character's dad. I liked him because even though he was processing his own grief, you could tell that his daughter's future was very important to him. You could tell he was about breaking generational curses, which I love, because I feel like, especially in the Black community, that isn't talked about enough. I feel like with our generation, we're kind of getting there, but it was just nice that he was willing to like put things out on the table, talk about grief, process things, was willing to talk about counseling even. I just really loved that about him. And I loved that even though he I think the easy thing would have been to say, Bree, no, you have to stay here, because like, we're going through this together. We need to stick together. I think that would have been the easy thing to do. But I think he did an even more difficult thing and like let her go.
Yes. So. He definitely gave her room to grow and room to kind of discover what she was feeling and everything she was going through without stifling her.
Yes.
And that is appreciated.
And I think everybody in this book has faults. And I don't want to say they're my least favorite character, but everybody in this book, I don't want to, even Bree, sometimes I was like, even as the main character, it was sometimes she wasn't always likable.
Right.
Because don't get me wrong, I understand she's going through grief, but that first part of the book, which I don't really think this is a spoiler, because it's like very early on in the book, but where she wants to go out their first night on campus, and like her best friend Alice is like, no, like, but they go anyway and get in trouble. I was like, girl, like, your first night, your best friend, like, come on. Like, there's no solidarity there. Come on, girl. So, I don't know. I just felt like everybody had faults. And I was reading and I was enjoying everybody. You know what I mean? But none of them really, I wouldn't call them my least favorite character or my favorite character, basically.
Got you. I think I was leaning towards William besides Bree. William is the healer. I
liked him.
Really liked him in the way that he had to be the one to help breathe through this world, honestly. He was the one who gave
Nick was gonna let her die.
Yeah, William definitely
left her
helped.
To die. Didn't give her no information. Threw her into this world. Whatever. Yes,
exactly. So I think I appreciated that. He really knew his space, I think. And his position. He never took things overboard. I think he was really a good, settled type of character. Also, Alice, especially towards the end, we didn't see much of her. But just the way that she sticks up for Bree, I'm a really big person for friendship, so I just thought that was really great. For my least favorite character, it would be Tor. Actually, she
Really?
would, yes.
She was bad, but not that bad. I thought she might say like Vaughn or something.
No, it just, something about her in the end when she just wouldn't, like, get on board. It was just like, are you kidding me? Like, we've gone through all these pages, this whole adventure, and you just can't get on board.
And honestly, it was like she didn't want to accept Bree, but I honestly feel like at that point Bree had proven herself.
Exactly. So that was really big for me. So yeah, kind of going from there, we could hopefully go into the deep dive because I think I've been trying to tiptoe around subjects so there was no spoiler alert. So here's the official spoiler alert.
Yes.
We are going to go into the nitty gritty and details of the book for a little bit.
All
okay?
Right.
So let's start from the beginning, like you said, going and dealing with the theme of death, grief, and loss, you know. If it's not known now, Bree loses her mother, you know?
I mean, in the prologue.
In the prologue.
We didn't even get to chapter 1 yet.
In a car accident, and she doesn't see the body, but eventually, you know, as certain memories come to her, she realizes and she feels that magic is involved, right? Mm-hmm. There's something else going on. But I think we're introduced to this grief and this connection to girlhood, and womanhood and motherhood that I think is important. So what do you think about how Bree is dealing with her mom's death?
I think it's hard for her to deal with her mom's death because of like the last time she saw her mom, it wasn't necessarily on good terms. Mm-hmm. So I think that's difficult for her. But I also kind of feel like because of that, that's kind of what propelled her to like figure out like what was this magic around like my mom's death. Like I need to make sure that everyone knows that she mattered. Like I'm not just gonna go quietly if there is something suspicious about my mom's death. Like I gotta figure it out. And so I think like it this grief actually made her, kind of gave her strength to like figure out what actually happened with her mom.
Right. I think one thing I kind of noticed throughout it, where for me it felt like one of those unlikable moments almost, or I guess at the end of the day I can't connect to this because I haven't experienced it, but this idea that Bree creates two parts of herself, like the before Bree and after Bree. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of even in your quote, like all these and notices of these walls kind of popping up in her life that she's setting and she's seeing. And I think it starts separating her from people like Alice.
Right.
And I think that was something that was difficult for me to read, where I was like trying to be empathetic, but it's like it was a hard type of sympathy of her dealing with these two personalities. Of this after Bree was really tough. And I guess you have to be when that happens.
Right. I definitely could understand where she was coming from. Not that I've experienced that type of grief, but like I think even like when you just experience a trauma, right? Mm-hmm. I think you do kind of splinter yourself in the sense, like, because you're not the same, really. You do, I think eventually you have to reconcile the person you were before with the person you are now. But I do think in a way you aren't the same when you go through trauma like that. And I think you kind of are forced to create a new person. Or you just have like a new outlook on life. And like your way that you move through the world changes. Do I think that means you need to cut yourself off from everyone? No. But I do think I could see why it might be part of the process of like grief.
Right. I will say though, it was good to see, again, therapy being introduced, working on that mental health to figure out. And overall, she does the work to figure out, I did on purpose create these two personalities. And is it really working for me?
Right.
But therapy was so interesting because she's introduced to Patricia, I believe, mm-hmm. who's her therapist. And she realizes, along with this magical world of Arthurian legend, there is root magic. You know, and there's ancestry, there's power connected to her mom, and she figures out that her mom didn't necessarily teach her mm-hmm. all of these things. Maybe she's protecting her. So yeah, what do you think of Patricia and root magic?
I felt like Patricia came on really strong, if I'm being honest. I felt like that wasn't the way to really ease her into this world, because like she just doesn't know yet. But then again, I guess like Patricia didn't know either that like her mom wouldn't have introduced her at all, I guess. So I guess there needs to be grace extended on both sides. But I am grateful for Patricia's role in this, although I felt like she maybe like kind of rushed things with Bree. I'm grateful that she showed Bree that she does have a history, that she does have something she can connect to, because I think Bree was really missing that. As she learned more about the Order, I think she was missing, like, where's my ancestry? Where's my connection? Where is my magic? Like, because she herself, like you mentioned, had magic as well. And so I think that was a great way to, again, amplify the blackness, like is present in this book, but also just show that she does, even if she can't trace back, word for word, there's not like necessarily a physical wall, spiritually there is something that she can connect back to, and I thought that was really nice to see.
Yes. I really liked seeing the community aspect of this, because there's Patricia, and then eventually she introduces Mariah to kind of go further, and that their magic is connected to this sense of, I'm not completely taking, but I'm asking from the ancestors,
Right.
And going on memory walks to reconnect to my ancestors, and I'm receiving what they're giving me, the memories that they're giving me, the traditions, learning, the culture that they're giving us. It's really this reverence for people who have come before you, and recognizing, I think, in a more powerful way, the work that they've done, the lives that they've lived. So I think that was very powerful, and that was all within just about like 2 or 3 therapy sessions, right?
Right.
Which
right.
shows.
But that's why I felt like it was quick, because like all of this like condensed in 3 therapy sessions. I thought that was kind of fast. But.
Yes. So that's where she comes on strong, but it helped move along the story.
For sure.
Yes. So from family history, Black motherhood, have kind of just this sense, I guess, towards the ending of going into all this Arthurian legend of she's King Arthur, right?
Yes, which I was surprised because you said you'd feel like you knew it from the very beginning. I did not know that. I kind of got the sense of it when she started doing these memory walks, and I realized like she has all this power, like she has it coming from all sides. And also because frankly I'm part of a Facebook group, and like they mentioned that there was a twist, so I started getting an inkling of an idea of what the twist might be. So tell me about how you felt like you knew from the very beginning.
I knew from the beginning because I'm already kind of a Arthurian legend, King Arthur, Camelot enthusiast. I really love that details, and seeing that the cover was a Black girl, and just like hearing also snippets of on Twitter of this is so great, all of that. I pretty much guessed, I think, from the very beginning, like the point of views from her, and she's developing all these extra powers where there's ether, I don't even know how to pronounce that word, but in the atmosphere, all this magic, and she could see it. She has the sight for it. She conjures it. I was like, there's no way that Nick, a mediocre white boy, is King Arthur. I'm sorry. And he's a boy who left his like title that they assumed he had. I was just like, there could be no way. So just to see it, though, it was really interesting to see what really happened, because she's King Arthur due to her ancestor being raped, right?
Right.
So again, there's this part where we cannot deny this history. We cannot deny this. And we're looking into it and saying, there's a part where she was saying, I'm not a chosen one, you know? This wasn't something I chose. This was violence thrust upon me, you know? Right. So it's not necessarily something she's choosing, but it's something that she knows she needs to live up to right, for her ancestor, and the violence that they've experienced, right? Recognizing that truth, right? And that's where she was here again from the beginning, part of this kind of order in this world to figure out the truth of her mom's death.
Right. I thought the way everything like ultimately tied together was honestly beautiful in a way, because it recognized the violent history of slavery, but it also recognized what can come out of recognizing the truth or accepting the truth, and how you can kind of move forward from there. And I also feel like it was a great way to show I don't know, I just felt like it was like a good bump you to the white people. Like, I'm not going to try to be super articulate about it. They thought they had this wonderful society and that they were like, just above everyone else and all this stuff. And it's just like, boom, King Arthur is a black woman, period. Now what?
What you gonna do?
Yeah, like, this magic has been in my lineage. Like, you thought this was you? Nope. Me. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not going to try to be super articulate about it. That's what I liked. There was a big bump you to the white people.
Yes. And I think, again, going back to my least favorite character, that's why I don't like Tor, you know? Because at the end of the day, she is not accepting. She's like, that's not my king. And it's just like, your king spirit literally was imbibed and connected with Bree Matthews. Like, Bree Matthews is it. She's that girl. So that denial, I was just like, it didn't sit well with my spirit.
Okay.
So that was something that really but I agree. The ending was really beautiful in that way. And it leads to the next book eventually, which will be Bookmark, that's coming up. There's a lot of other twists and turns in it. But I think we covered a good basis of everything. Yeah.
No, there's definitely some other twists and turns. We didn't spoil everything, and I think it is a good read. I just think you're going to need to put aside some time for this book if you would want to read it, because it is like 500 pages almost, and the font size is not big.
Yes, it is
definitely
tiny.
Pretty small. Definitely going to want to put aside some time for this if you want to read it. And as far as my writing wish, I wish she could have gotten it closer to just 400 pages flat, maybe 350. And also, I looked at the second book and it looks like it might be 700 pages, and I'm just like, that is a lot to me. That seems like a lot. I feel like it almost feels like information overload. Like, when you're trying to learn, well, you might know because you are into the whole King Arthur stuff, but the Squire, Page, Scion, I don't know the difference between all these things. Then the names for all the Shadowborn creatures, and it just was a lot.
There's something here that she's creating, so I feel like all these introductions to things is needed especially for the first book, but I will say the demon names was a lot. There are some particular things in terminology that I definitely am invested in this world, where when I was reading I couldn't stop, but it was really good.
I think everything should be a hell fox, hell squirrel, hell giant. We don't need fancy names. Everything is hell, whatever it is. Boom.
I will say my writing wish, I really am looking forward to hearing and reading about more of the root magic. I think that was another part where it was these white people thought they only had the magic, but black people have been nurturing and conducting magic in their own way.
And keeping it away from you guys.
And keeping it away from them. For all these years. And I thought that was something that was really beautiful. And like you said, it really had me invested from my African American studies point of view.
And for my other writing wish, I want a black boy introduced.
Yes.
I don't want neither of these toxic white boys for Bree.
Got you. Yes.
I'm not feeling the love triangle.
Yes, there is a pretty much love triangle, but I'm always here for toxicity, just out of just pure fun, and my trope. But I would love some real black love and having a black boy. I would like some black character.
Love. He could be mixed. He could be Asian. Actually, just not a white boy. How about that?
That's all you want? Okay, that's fair. Got you.
It could be Alice's brother.
Yes.
That's how I feel. I will say there's a lot of representation in here. I felt like a lot of people it's not like all straight people. It's definitely like bi. I felt like lesbian. Like I thought there was a good mix. I like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like done in a way that was like forced. It just was like, kind of weaved in there. Again, just like the whole black stuff. Like it was just weaved in there. Like it again does not take you away from the fantasy world.
Exactly. I agree. And I think that's a great note to end on.
Yes, so this was great.
Yes.
We really highly suggest going to read Legendborn. The short review will be on Instagram, and then the long review will be up on the blog shortly thereafter. Thanks you guys for watching and listening. Please make sure you like and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Check out our website, and make sure you read Legendborn. Anything else?
Nothing else. That's it.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to our third episode of the Bootleg Book Club podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.